Sandra, let me just start with you. What was your reaction when you saw the vote today that the Senate Republicans, with 6 exceptions, voted to block the creation of this commission?
Well, I was very disappointed, obviously. I was very optimistic and hopeful yesterday, but for, obviously, some of them I was not surprised that voted no, but still clinging to that hope based on our passionate pleas to them. But I think, it speaks volumes to how they really feel, not only about the events of that day, but they're also speaking volumes to their constituents, and how much they really care. Because it's not just our pleas about how we felt about Brian and, his brothers and sisters in blue and everything that they did that day, but also the safety of them and everyone else that was in the Capitol that day. If they can't do their jobs, if something happens to them, that also speaks volumes about, how they feel about our democracy in general. How can they do their job if they are no longer here?
What about you, Gladys? What was your reaction to the news today?
Oh, I was disappointed, but I realized that was going to happen. I really did. It was just vibes that we got yesterday. But
what were the vibes?
I don't know, just a feeling that they went through their motions, but you can tell that underneath they were being nice to us. Yeah.
We hear a lot about backing the blue. From politicians especially. We talk about the importance of backing our men and women in blue who protect us. What does it mean in that sense when, because you're going to hear some of these 35 Republicans talk about in the future how important it is to back our men and women in blue. What will you think when you hear that?
Unbelievable that they think like that. It's just, if they had a child that was hurt, or was killed on a day like that, they would think very differently. Or if they were hurt, they could have somebody could have been killed, one of the congressmen, one of the senators, but apparently they just think, well, we're safe because of the men in blue. But they don't think any further than that.
What do you think? Gladys said it was a slap in the face to not have this commission created.
I think, it's all talk and no action. Clearly, they're not backing the blue. And yesterday, having Officer Fanone and Officer Dunn there to talk about their experiences, I even learned more about what actually happened on that day, hearing their stories, close and up front, and live and in color. And I was absolutely appalled. So, they heard it firsthand. Some of that stuff has not been put out in the media. It's devastating because, they could have, especially Officer Fanone, he could have been murdered. This cannot happen again. It cannot. So for them to vote no is, it's not protecting law enforcement. And, more importantly, it's not protecting our democracy. People there were not only hurting law enforcement officers, and then, of course, like I said yesterday, there's the ripple effect of trauma that's still continuing today.
Oh, of course.
Many officers, are struggling with PTSD.
And people should know you're a psychotherapist, so this is something you know about.
Yes. I work with people all the time that struggle with PTSD. So I know how devastating and debilitating it can be. And then it's the family members that are struggling to pick up the pieces of that daily. But it's also, those people were there to, destroy the will of the people. They could have destabilized government as we know it. The vice president was in the building. People were after the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. It's just unbelievable to me that they could do nothing about this. And now is not the time to sit around and say, well, maybe we'll do something in the future. The time to do something is now. And again, though there was some tense moments yesterday, I'm hopeful that at least they'll be able to reflect on some of what we said as the days go on. and they'll be able to, start to get the ball rolling fast and say, we need to do something now. And I think more importantly is to listen to the officers that were there that day on the ground, because there's this misconception that there was no firearms there, that those people in the crowd had no firearms. There were firearms there. And I'm talking about handguns, not just the, general term weapons. I'm talking about actual handguns. People had handguns on them. So, this is serious. This is serious stuff. I actually heard the former DC police chief here that was on this network, Charles Ramsey, that was talking about, they need to get serious about this because, some bad stuff is going to happen, and they need to take this seriously, if not for themselves, about the other employees that are in the Capitol, the staffers, the architect of the architect of the Capitol. I was very moved by Senator Klobuchar's opening statement in the hearings when she talked about the gentleman who hid in the closet that was part of the cleaning crew.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
And he came out and had to clean up urine and feces in the building. This is ridiculous. They need to do something, and they need to act now.
So Gladys, I know some of the, Sandra just alluded to it, some of the moments in the meetings were tense. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think people don't, it doesn't really even matter, but Brian was a Republican. So it's not just turning their backs on an American, they're turning their back on a fellow Republican. Whatever you're comfortable with, tell me about the tense moments and the senators that you met with. You don't have to name them if you don't want to.
No, I'm not going to do that. They were very charming, and they knew what they were doing. They knew how to talk to us, and but we kind of held back, and it was tense, and we just made believe, everything was fine, and we were very nice to them, for the most part.
Well, it was just tense because
we knew, I think, because we knew they weren't sincere. They weren't sincere.
And they didn't want to get to the bottom of what happened.
No, and I don't understand it. They are elected for us, the people, and they don't care about that. They care about money, I guess, their pocketbooks. So they'll be in front of the cameras when they feel like it, and they just don't care. And it's not right.
Sandra, were you surprised some of the senators didn't even agree to meet with you?
No, I wasn't surprised. It's much easier to do interviews with people who are not moved by their actions, by losing a family member or a loved one like Gladys and I were, right? To do something from afar. It's very different when you have to face someone who has been touched personally by something like Gladys and I were. It's about having courage and a backbone and saying, I'm willing to meet with you, which I respect those who were. Even if they didn't agree with us, I still have respect for those who were, and them willing to listen. And hopefully, even though some of them did decide ultimately to vote no, my hope is that they will eventually do something because that needs to happen.
Gladys, you met with Senator Cassidy from Louisiana. Mm-hmm. He voted yes. Mm-hmm. You met with Senator Portman from Ohio. He voted yes. Senator Toomey had a family commitment, so he didn't vote, but he would have voted yes, he said. Does that give you any sense of satisfaction that you may have
definitely
changed some minds?
Definitely. I don't know how, I don't know if they were on the fence or not. That I'm not sure of. Were they all on the fence? I'm not sure.
Well, we only knew of 3 ahead of time that were going to vote yes, the Romney, Murkowski, and Collins. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, 3 more voted yes.
Then maybe we change their minds. That would be great. That would be great.
It's not nothing.
Right.
A bipartisan majority did vote to create the commission. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't enough at the end.
Yeah, what bothers me is that all these people that are backing, the wrong people, I should say, they don't understand what they're doing. What kind of country do they want? Do they really want to live in a country that they're creating? Do they
a
want their
country where
children?
this kind of insurrection
Right,
happens.
yeah, do they want their children to grow up like this? I mean, do they really want those people that we saw on January 6th, do they want them to be like that? They want a government that, you know, that is with these people? I just don't understand it.